3, 2, 1.
In less than 14 hours, Hurricane Milton will make landfall on the western coast of Florida. Winds will be fierce at well over 100 miles per hour, with storm surges reaching up to 15 feet and up to 18 inches of rain. It's looking like the storm of the century. I'm here with leaders of my administration who are in the front lines preparing for this storm and will brief me in our latest efforts. To save lives and livelihoods, I want to emphasize a few things. First, many communities in Hurricane Milton's path do not have a moment to catch their breath between Helene and Milton. 2 historic storms in 2 weeks. I want to thank everyone who has followed local guidance to evacuate ahead of the landfall. I know it's really tough leaving behind your home, your belongings, everything you own, but I urge everyone in Hurricane Milton's path to follow all safety instructions as we head to the next 24 hours. It's literally a matter of life and death. Second, for the last week, my team has done everything possible to prepare for this storm. I immediately approved emergency declarations in Florida and the Seminole Tribe in Florida. I also surged search and rescue teams, water, food, power generators, ambulances to the region. In my direction, Administrator Criswell will be in the State Emergency Operations Center in Florida tonight. And Kamala and I are going to keep pressure on the companies so prices stay stable on gasoline, flights, and goods people need. Finally, we're teaming up with state and local officials to support impacted communities. I spoke with the Florida Governor DeSantis, with Mayor the Tampa Mayor, the Clearwater Mayor, Rector, and the Pinellas County Chairwoman, Peters. I offer them everything we need, everything we have, everything they need. And I made it clear to them they should reach out if there's anything more they need. I gave them my personal phone number here at the White House to contact me directly if that's necessary. Let me close with this. I want to thank the governors of all the affected areas over the last couple weeks. Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Virginia. We've been in constant contact, and they've been very thankful and appreciative of the help the federal government is providing. And I'm appreciative of all they're doing as well. And I've told them to contact me with anything else they need. We have made available an unprecedented number of assets to deal with this crisis. We're going to continue to do so until the job is done. But now I want to be clear about something. For the last few weeks, there's been a reckless, irresponsible, and relentless promotion of disinformation and outright lies that are disturbing people. It's undermining confidence in the incredible rescue and recovery work that has already been taken and will continue to be taken. And it's harmful to those who need help the most. There is simply no place for this to happen. Former President Trump has led the onslaught of lies. Assertions have been made that property is being confiscated. That's simply not true. They're saying people impacted by these storms will receive $750 in cash and no more. That's simply not true. They're saying the money is needed for this crisis is being diverted to migrants. What a ridiculous thing to say. It's not true. Now the claims are getting even more bizarre. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, a congresswoman from Georgia, is now saying the federal government is literally controlling the weather. We're controlling the weather. It's beyond ridiculous. It's got to stop. In moments like this, there are no red or blue states. There's one United States of America, where neighbors are helping neighbors. Volunteers and first responders are risking everything, including their own lives, to help their fellow Americans. State, local, and federal officials are standing side by side. Let me repeat, no one should make the American people question whether their governments will make sure that this disaster, when it strikes, they'll be there. We will, all of us. I'm going to turn it over to Vice President Harris, if that's okay with all of you. Thank you. Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Liz, thank you for the work that you have been doing. As the President said, we've been working around the clock to prepare for Hurricane Milton and to ensure that people are safe, including ensuring federal, state, and local resources are being coordinated in a smart and efficient and effective way. We have also been in constant contact with the leaders in Florida to make sure that we are cutting any red tape that might get in the way of getting relief to folks, to make sure also that communities receive the resources and the support that they need as quickly as possible. Already, we have sent more than 1,000 federal personnel to be on the ground in Florida to assist with what needs to happen in the state to prepare for this hurricane, and we will continue to scale up those efforts. To the people of Florida, and in particular the people of the Tampa region, we urge you to take this storm seriously. As has been said before, this is a storm that is expected to be of historic proportion. And many of you, I know, are tough, and you've ridden out these hurricanes before. This one's going to be different. And so we ask you that by every measure, understand it's going to be more dangerous, more deadly, and more catastrophic. So please listen to your local officials. They know what they're talking about. They know what they're doing. And if you are told to evacuate, please evacuate immediately. Do not wait until it is too late. And in the hours and days ahead, President Biden and I and our administration will continue to do everything we can to protect the people who have been in the path of this storm. And once the storm has passed, we will be there to help folks recover and rebuild, as we continue to do for those communities in Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina, and across the Southeast who have been devastated by Hurricane Helene. Finally, as the President mentioned, to any company or individual that might use this crisis to exploit people who are desperate for help through illegal fraud or price gouging, whether it be at the gas pump, the airport, or the hotel counter, know that we are monitoring these behaviors and the situation on the ground very closely, and anyone taking advantage of consumers will be held accountable. The bottom line is this hurricane poses an extreme danger, and we urge everyone in Florida to take extreme caution. And we are with you, and we will get through this together. And with that, I will hand it over to Homeland Security Advisor Liz Sherwood-Randall.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Mr. President, Madam Vice President, you will now receive a briefing on the latest forecast for Hurricane Milton and actions that we have taken to prepare for it and be ready to respond to it. You'll hear from Administrator of FEMA, Deanne Criswell, the Director of the National Hurricane Center, Mike Brennan, the Director of the National Weather Service, Ken Graham, Secretary of Homeland Security, Ali Mayorkas, and the Commandant of the Coast Guard, Admiral Linda Fagan. We'll begin the briefing with Administrator Criswell. Over to you, Deanne.
Thank you, Liz. Mr. President, Madam Vice President, I just want to assure you we are taking this storm very seriously. As you will hear from Dr. Brennan shortly, Milton is currently a Category 4 storm and will remain a hurricane as it crosses over Florida. At your direction, Mr. President, I will be traveling down to Tallahassee tonight to embed at the State EOC to meet with my team as well as our state partners. And I will be there to assess the damages and the impacts immediately following the storm, working in close coordination with the state to ensure that they have everything that they need to support their priorities. As you have always directed me to do, I am leaning forward to make sure that we are strategically placing our resources and our teams to be able to rapidly respond in Florida. There are currently over 1,000 federal personnel on the ground in Florida supporting the efforts from Hurricane Helene, as well as the previous storms that have happened over the last few years. And I have directed, at your direction, an additional 1,200 search and rescue personnel from FEMA, the Coast Guard, and the Department of Defense to stage in Florida so they are ready to take action as soon as Milton makes landfall. This also includes 30 high water vehicles, helicopters, as well as boats to be able to go in and support the counties and the states as needed. I've also moved over 500 ambulances to help assist with the response. 6 incident management assistance teams, one specifically into Tampa and others throughout the region, multiple power assessment teams, and dozens of medical facility assessment teams, so they can go in and check on the health and medical facilities as soon as the storm passes. And Mr. President and Madam Vice President, I have also moved millions of meals and liters of water into Florida to be able to support any of those immediate needs. I really appreciate, Mr. President and Madam Vice President, your continuous effort to help lift up the warnings and the guidance that you just gave about what people need to do in the path of Hurricane Milton. This is an extremely dangerous storm, and we need all of the residents that are in the path of the storm to listen to their local officials. They will tell you if there's still time to evacuate or what you need to do if you are still where you're at. They will give you the right information about what you need to do to protect yourself where you are at right now. Sometimes just traveling a few miles inland can mean the difference between life and death, and nobody has to lose their life as a result of this storm. So in short, Mr. President and Madam Vice President, I assure you we are taking this storm extremely seriously. We are focused, and we are ready to support the people of Florida.
Dan, you're doing a hell of a job. You always have. We've been through a lot of this together, all three of us, including the Vice President. And I have one question right now, though. What are you most worried about today and into tomorrow? And what messaging can we do to help people in the hours before it makes landfall?
Mr. President, the biggest concern is making sure people have gotten out of harm's way. Over the next 24 hours, we are going to see significant winds. We are going to see storm surge. We are going to see flooding from the rain. People need to be able to take this storm seriously. They need to move, if they still have time to move, out of harm's way. And we are prepared to support Florida with additional search and rescue assets to help save lives. That's our immediate concern, Mr. President, is saving lives over the next 24 hours.
Have you ever seen a storm like this one since you've been in charge?
I think this is going to be one of the biggest ones that we have seen after it makes landfall. I mean, we saw a lot of impact from Hurricane Ian, but this one is different. This one just looks different, and I think we're going to have a lot of impacts and people that are going to need our help, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
Administrator Criswell,
Yes, ma'am.
are we concerned about any misinformation or disinformation regarding evacuations that we need to clear up at this point?
There's been a lot of misinformation out there, Madam Vice President, that's for sure. But I have not heard anything specific to the evacuations. I think that the local officials, the state officials have been very strong in getting that message out there and getting people to move out of harm's way. I was in Florida on Monday and met with the mayor of Tampa as well as the mayor of St. Petersburg, and we saw people evacuating. And so they are listening to their local officials, and that was encouraging.
That's great. Thank you.
I think we'll move on then. Thank you, Administrator Criswell. We'll move to Director Brennan from the National Hurricane Center.
Thank you, Liz. Mr. President, Madam Vice President, good afternoon. As Administrator Criswell mentioned, we are just hours away from seeing a potentially catastrophic hurricane landfall along the west coast of Florida, with the center of Milton expected to cross the coast late this evening or very early tomorrow morning. Is a powerful major hurricane, and a large hurricane at that. We are already seeing multiple life-threatening hazards playing out across Florida. We have multiple tornado warnings in effect across portions of southern Florida. We're seeing winds increasing, heavy rainfall spreading across much of the state. And conditions are going to rapidly deteriorate over the next few hours, especially where landfall is going to occur along the west coast. That's where we're expecting that devastating storm surge of as much as 10 to 15 feet above ground level from somewhere near the Tampa Bay region southward to Port Charlotte, with significant storm surge extending hundreds of miles even farther south to the Fort Myers and Naples area. And that is why we have been supporting so many evacuation decisions to get people away from that devastating storm surge. Time is running out now for people to leave along the west coast before conditions deteriorate further. Additionally, Milton is going to be a powerful hurricane when it makes landfall and move quickly across the state and remain at hurricane intensity as it moves across Florida tonight and as it enters the western Atlantic during the day tomorrow. So that is going to bring the risk of hurricane conditions to much of the central portion of the state. We have hurricane warnings in effect from Fort Myers up through Tampa to Cedar Key along the west coast, all the way through the I-4 corridor across Orlando to Daytona Beach, up to St. Augustine, including the Cape Canaveral area and the east coast down to Port St. Lucie. So a large area is at risk of seeing devastating wind impacts, widespread power outages, structural damage, and that could lead to a very unsafe environment after the storm, where we tend to see a lot of post-storm fatalities in this very dangerous environment that's left. Additionally, we are expecting very heavy rainfall, 6 to 12 inches, amounts as high as 18 inches across the heavily populated I-4 corridor from Tampa to Orlando to Daytona Beach, which could lead to widespread catastrophic and life-threatening flash flooding and urban flooding tonight and into Thursday in that area. And that's an area where we lost about 16 people in Hurricane Ian to that same type of flooding. So there's a tremendous risk to both life and property there. I do want to thank the administrator and FEMA and her for her team's support and our coordination on that. And I finally want to thank the NOAA and Air Force Reserve hurricane hunters who've been flying into Milton for days now, providing us just tremendously valuable direct data that has really helped inform our life-saving forecast and warnings. So thank you, Mr. President, Madam Vice President.
Mike, I know you're tired of hearing from me. I've been talking to you so much lately, but I appreciate your constant input you've given me and let me know what's going on. What more can you tell us about how the location of this storm is going to affect the storm surge in Florida? I mean, because that's pretty consequential, right? The surge. I mean, that's what you're focusing on?
Yes, Mr. President, that just a shift of a few miles in the landfall location will make a big difference in what area sees that very worst storm surge. So a track of the center to the north of Tampa Bay would push the highest storm surge into Tampa Bay itself. A track 5 or 10 or 20 miles south would push that higher storm surge, say, down to the Sarasota, Port Charlotte area. Even as close as we are to landfall, it's not really possible to tell exactly where that worst surge will occur. It's one wobble away from shifting 10 or 20 miles. So that's why we've conveyed that risk across such a large area to help support the evacuation of much of that west central coast of Florida.
But Tampa Bay is particularly vulnerable, correct?
Correct. Yes, Mr. President. It's one of the most vulnerable locations along the entire west coast of Florida because water gets funneled up into the bay. If you were to see a worst case scenario there, you could see storm surge as much as twice as high as they saw during Helene, where it got up to 7 or 8 feet in the bay. It could potentially get up above 10 feet in this event.
Well, thanks a lot, Mike. I appreciate it.
Hey, Mike, it's good to see you again, and thank you for all your work. So for the folks who have been living in Florida